Radical LGBTQ books are being taught to 5-year-old kids in rural Indiana. Do you think we can recruit John Mellencamp to do a public service concert called Kitty Aid? Or would that just attract the pervs? I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and I was born in a small town. I could breathe in a small town. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. This is the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell and our good friends at MyPillow. Hey, everybody needs a pillow, right? I mean, if you know somebody who doesn't sleep on a pillow, they're probably a communist. So the best way to fight communism is to make sure everybody has a MyPillow. How's that for a syllogism? And this week they are giving you a huge break on the best bed sheets around. That's right. Their famous Giza sheets are available right now at 50% off, which means you can buy 2 for the price of 1. All you have to do is use the code Dr. Duke. That's Dr. D-U-K-E, D-R-D-U-K-E. Visit MyPillow and get up to 66% on all other bedding ensemble items. Okay, today we start in rural Indiana, hailing John Mellencamp, where parents are seeing the leftist push in school after a teacher of 5-year-olds requested that parents help provide LGBTQ books for use in the classroom. This is a letter from one of our moms and dads. We asked if we could use their name and we didn't hear back, so we're not going to let you know the name of the couple that sent us this information. But it's one way that moms and dads at home interact with us. We get a lot of great stories from this. We don't have any in Indiana newspaper supporting this story, or it's not been on Fox News Indiana, so we're going to explain to you what the story was, and we'll show you some of the imagery here. Dr. Duke, the letter goes, my husband and I have been watching FreedomProject Media for about 1.5 to 2 years now. We are thankful for what you're doing. Here's the problem. One of our schools has recently had a young teacher who possibly has read, but was definitely planning to read, children's books with LGBTQ plus characters and themes to 5-year-olds. A parent brought it up at a school board meeting that these books were on the teacher's Amazon wish list for parents to help buy for her classroom. When he questioned her on it, she was defensive of the teacher and made it clear that it was her planned agenda to teach these things. I've heard there were 3 books in question, but I only know 2 of the names, and this is what we're going to talk about. This is The Prince and the Knight, and Dazzling Travis. The parent basically said that they had taken their son out of class until this could be resolved, and if it wasn't fixed, they were not afraid to pull him out of school. And so, on top of all of the documented evidence we have from schools all across the country, we now have this. It is still at the moment, for lack of a way of following it up, it's anecdotal, but doesn't surprise anybody. Now, those are 2 books I had not heard of, and they're both really inappropriate for children, particularly about 5-year-olds. Take a look at the Dazzling Travis one. It's got everything you want in a politically correct book. There's the kid on the cover is African American. He's dazzling Travis, and look at the same imagery here: the Prince and the Knight. And there's the Prince, and I love this. Their own sexism, these liberals and their sexism. They can't help themselves. The Prince and the Knight. There are all these pretty women on their knees before this prince. What kind of a message are you sending? What kind of an anti-feminist, misogynist even, message are you sending? All to convince us that you're elevating queer culture because the prince can't be bothered by all those beautiful girls, again, on their knees. He's too busy scoping out the dude in the knight costume, right? This is what's going on in our schools today. It's staggeringly dangerous and stupid.
Yes, it is. And according to the email from the viewer, which thank you, by the way, for watching, the only decision that the school board made about these books and other books in general was that parents should be notified ahead of time if anything related to human sexuality or gender identity is to be covered, and have the chance to opt out, and that those 2 topics shouldn't be covered in grades younger than 4th grade. But then they added, without parental consent. So Basically, as it says in here, so basically nothing was done. It is already Indiana's Department of Education code that parents should have been notified ahead of time, and they were not. After this decision to pretty much do nothing, I would not send my child back to this school. I would not trust this teacher or basically any other to not force their woke agenda on my child. We're getting this across the nation. I mean, we talk about it all the time in the big cities because that's where, the news actually breaks out. But when we get these rural stories, it has to almost always come from the parents because they're the ones, the small town newspaper of which I've worked for doesn't always cover this. You'll know when there is a polka or a swing dance event, but you might not know about the hidden stuff happening at your school.
Well, and I was in South Dakota giving a series of talks this weekend, and as far as states go, South Dakota definitely would be considered a rural state. And so I was in the second biggest Rapid City, the second biggest city in the state, I believe, and I think it's a city of about 150,000 people. I mean, we're talking that's the second biggest city in the state. So this is a rural community, and this really helps these letters because a lot of moms and dads in rural places they've all seen things, but they haven't seen the worst things. And so this is a good way of reminding them that you are a rural school. If the public school system, the educrat elite are going to start somewhere, they're going to start in the inner city schools, right? And they're going to start in the big schools like Chicago schools, California schools, New York schools. Why? Because not only do you have huge population densities, you have huge numbers of minorities. The worst of what they're after here, they're targeting at the minority kids first. And then it radiates out from there to the rural schools. So the stuff is coming everywhere, and it's coming fast. Our interlocutor also goes on to say, we are a small community, like I'm just talking about, where most people know each other or know of. We are a small community where most people know each other or know of each other, and this is pitting people against themselves. So it's ignorance running amok. The teacher in question was one of my closest friends in high school, and I honestly didn't know that she thought that these things were okay, let alone was pushing this agenda in our community's 5-year-olds. That's a really important point. It's not like this teacher has worn this on her sleeve. She's not running around the city of Indiana that this is taking place in, this small town, and being an activist. She is quietly, subversively, with not even some of her best friends since high school knowing it, using her classroom to twist and mold kids in this particular way. So much so that this particular father or mother is stunned to see her acting this way, even though they've been known for years and years.
Before we move on, just a quick reminder that the best way to access our content is to download our Freedom Project Media app. Simply search Freedom Project in your app store, download, and then you make sure you allow for notifications. Also, if you like listening to the audio podcast, we are available on Apple, Google, SoundCloud, and everywhere else. I want to let everyone know, PSA time. When a woman is called female, it is dehumanizing. This summer, the University of California, Santa Barbara's Daily Nexus, so their college paper, published a story called Stop Calling Women Females. And it was written by someone named Kenneth Moody. The names, Kenneth Moody. Well, Kenneth decided...
Just call him what he is, premenstrual Ken.
Kenneth decided in his lead to say, can we, as a society, agree to stop referring to women as females in casual conversation?
No, we can't, Ken. Next question.
Grabbed your attention, didn't it? No matter where I see that terminology, outside of biology, it always feels dehumanizing, uncomfortable, and overwhelmingly sexist. It is time to let the word female be reserved for biology class or join the ever-growing dictionary of archaic terminology. This is Kenneth's lead. This is how he kicked.
And why is Ken?
Why is Kenneth writing about this?
Why is Ken not bothered by male then?
We'll get to more about who Kenneth is. In the second graph, then, Kenneth says, right out of the gate, female as a scientific adjective has been used in medical spaces which have a history of pathologizing people for who they are. For example, the mental disorder of hysteria was considered an exclusively female disease to justify the notion that women are crazy.
He just used the word female. He blew his own advice. And yet, the word hysteria has nothing to do necessarily with the label female, does it? Are you telling me, Kenneth, that only women have uteruses? Uteri? Is it uteri?
Uteri. Would that be multiple?
Are you telling us, Kenneth, that only women can give birth? See,
How
I think
dare you, Kenneth?
the problem here is, Kenneth, is you're just not woke enough. I think of the song by REM, R-E-M.
By REM, R-E-M.
REM. What's the
REM
frequency,
sleep?
Kenneth?
Oh,
about a deluded individual who with a tinfoil hat who thought he was hearing crazy things. Kenneth, are you the Kenneth of What's the Frequency, Kenneth?
Okay. So he continues, even though it is common knowledge now that there is no such thing as female hysteria when female is used as...
I beg on bended knee to disagree with that statement. There's no such thing.
Like the last story, bended knee?
There's no such thing as female hysteria. Yeah, there kind of is.
You didn't let me finish his
Go
statement.
ahead.
When female is used as a synonym for women, a loaded history is being alluded to. This is not much different than the reason why we do not refer to gay people as homosexuals.
Yeah,
Except we
people
do.
still do, yeah. Homosexuality
If you're
is...
talking
and by
about-
the way, how many times have you heard gay people call each other homo? I watched Will and Grace Against My Will for 3 years because my wife had it on in repeats. Do you know how many times homos called each other homos? Do you know how many times? Endlessly. Kenneth, I ask again, what's your frequency?
Who's hysterical? Where's
I know.
the hysteria?
It sounds like Ken's having a bit of a pissy party. Ken,
Tell me how you really
Are
feel
you
about having
bloated?
to watch Will and Grace.
Ken, when you put your pants on, are they a little tight at this time of the month? Do you retain water? Ken, does a Midol make you feel a little bit better? This could be nothing more than your menstruation moment.
All right, there's more. At the very least, the clinical terms of female and homosexual, when used in everyday conversation, give an impression that women and gay people are a different species from normal, cisgender, and heterosexual men, and therefore less human. The one deviant characteristic is highlighted to be the only quality that matters, and all the other human qualities are like having a family, dreams, motions, and hobbies disappear.
So you're literally about labels when you just called them heteronormative cisgendered men. You just reduced an entire class of men, 90% of men who are heterosexual and cisgendered. It's way higher than 90%. You just took about 97.5% of males and reduced them to cisgender heteronormativity, and you have no sense of irony? Look, I will say this. I know enough about PMS to know that when women are on it, they don't appreciate irony. They think sarcasm is annoying. So Ken, the evidence is really mounting here that what you may need is a little slab of dark chocolate, a lie down with a cool washcloth over your eyes, and again, some Midol.
Again, you have little kids. Obviously, they're racist. So we must teach those preschoolers about anti-racism. So, according to the National Association for the Education of Young Children's Journal Summer Edition, they decided to write all about how our little preschoolers need to be taught anti-racism. As preschoolers, you can never start soon enough. In the womb, should have been saying, Black Lives Matter. 4 professors wrote the article. I'm not even going to go over who they are because they're all in education. They obviously are all about...
One of them named Kenneth?
Kenneth Moody. No. One's named Ihoma. But they wrote an article, and it was called... It's a Viewpoint article, obviously. Viewpoint. Creating Anti-Racist Early Childhood Spaces. And here's what the summary says. The focus on racial equity... equity... following the murder of George Floyd has resulted in conversations about racism that were unheard of less than a year ago. A critical examination of race bias Racial inequity and racism is taking place at every level in our society, and researchers, educators, and advocates have proposed anti-racism strategies for a variety of settings, including in early childhood spaces. To enact and sustain an anti-racist approach, early childhood educators need to understand the racial history of early childhood programs and the racism in current early childhood programs. In this article, we outline the past and present, along with the strategies for creating anti-racist early childhood spaces.
God, what a bunch of self-important college garbage. And by the way, equity. Let's talk about racial equity with George Floyd. There are hundreds and thousands of white overdoses every year. Hundreds of thousands of white people in this country who die from drug overdoses. Not one of them gets a holiday named after them. Not one of them is remembered as the head of a movement. Not one of those white people gets 1 ounce of the attention drug addict George Floyd got. And so let's talk about equity here, right? George, who was a petty criminal, an assaulter of people, and loaded to the gills with fentanyl when he died, fighting with cops after getting into a spat in a local convenience store, that George Floyd is a saint and a martyr now. That's what you call equity. Undeserved respect, undeserved love, undeserved popularity on the basis of being what you were. You got killed by a cop, I get it, and that cop is spending a long time. That cop is spending a lot more time in jail than you ever did for your many crimes. No one excuses that. Justice was done on that cop, and he's going to pay a bad price for it. But other than that, George, being a victim, equity in this sense means all the things that have come to you that you haven't deserved posthumously.
So the professors first wrote about the history of what was happening in early childhood and how things were taught, and then they talked about the danger of this colorblind approach, where basically you treat kids all the same because they're children.
That's dangerous.
In the sense of their color of their skin doesn't matter. That's dangerous. So what they say is, unlike the more common approaches taken, being anti-racist is more than loving all children the same or teaching children more generally about kindness and fairness. Okay. It's more than celebrating diversity during special events and then moving on with the curriculum. Anti-racist teachers teach about racism throughout the day and the curriculum. They point it out and acknowledge it, and they invite children to discuss race, racism, and inequity when they see it.
So, all day, every day, you interrupt the actual business of learning again and again and again and again and again, pointing out how everything you talk about, everything you do, every book, every assignment, every comment made in classroom, every recess, every lunch period, every sandwich eaten on the playground is somehow racist. This is what you do all day at the expense of everything else. And it's not good enough for you that we acknowledge racism, that we teach about racism, that we teach kids not to be racist. You're going to hector them and hound them day in, day out, every day until they've had enough, which will never come. That's your problem.
When teachers invite the conversation about how everyone is learning about race and that racism is all around us, we give children the space to name it and to become anti-racists themselves.
Show me the racism all around you. Please, I'm dying to see it.
They also included in this excerpts from Ibram X. Kendi, so they obviously know what's going on. And then they said, in early childhood classrooms, our future doctors, police officers, I can't believe they said that, government officials, and teachers who will live in a racial society. Creating an anti-racist early childhood program is essential for their survival.
What?
And will ensure that today's young children are not tomorrow's protesters demanding justice and chanting Black Lives Matter. So they're doing this so that we don't have the protests. They're trying to manipulate you to spin it to make it be like, well, I don't want protesters and you don't want protesters. So if they're all anti-racist, then there's no need.
So if you want to get rid of all this made-up nonsense, then surrender all the power to us and let us racialize your kid all day, every day. Okay, welcome to the instant classic portion of our show. We apologize for the general stupidity and ignorance of the previous 3 segments, but that's the American education system today. Our job is just to report on it, not to engage with it. So we, again, mea culpa, mea maxical culpa, for having to show you just how ridiculous American education is today. We end our segment with a little more Marc Chagall. There it is. Marc Chagall's painting, one of his most famous paintings, called The Birthday. Marc Chagall called love, quote, the primary color of his paintings. I like that. Love is the primary color of his paintings. The central source of the love in his life was his wife, Bella. They met when Bella was a teenager in their hometown, Vitebsk, Belarus. In 1915, Chagall finally married his dear Bella, despite the opposition of her parents, who wanted a better match for their daughter. I don't know, a guy who lives almost 100 years and becomes very wealthy and internationally known for being a great artist, but so much it be. The Birthday was painted by Chagall in 1915, just 2 weeks before he and Bella married. The painting is a wonderful expression of the amazing, flowing, and powerful love the two shared. It's almost like they kissed, and that kiss has turned them both into parade floats, in which they fall together. They're still connected at the lips. It's as if that one love that the two of them share is so big that it lifts both of them off their feet like helium. It was painted in 1915, just a few weeks before he married her, and the beautiful picture, flowing and dreamlike, floating above his Bella. His head is unrealistically craned upside down and backward as he twists around to kiss his future wife on the mouth. Bella is depicted as holding a cheerful bouquet of flowers and also floating, as if just lifting off. The couple is suspended in loving bliss in a bright living room dominated by a vivid red carpet. The painting is balanced above by the ivory, beige, and neutral tans of the living room furniture and walls. Unlike his symbolist masterpiece, other symbolist masterpieces like The Kiss by Gustav Klimt. In The Birthday, the kiss of the lovers is executed mostly in the Cubist or Expressionist style. The painting is a marvelous creation which powerfully conveys that feeling of euphoric love between young, blissful lovers in the beginning stages of their married life. It is a beautiful statement and a lot going on in that painting.
All right, well, we want to take a moment to show some love to our Patriot Club members, and today it's all about our good friend Nina from Brownsville, Texas. Nina, thank you for supporting us.
And that wraps up the show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's okay. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.